Hi everyone, I'm Allie with PotomacBeads. Join me in making this Carrelage bracelet featuring the 2-hole tiles as well as our new Tubelet beads. You can make this as a bangle or you can make it with a clasp. You can even change it up for a pair of earrings or for a necklace. If you need any of the supplies to join me, you can get the links below me in the description to shop with us online at PotomacBeads.com as well as PotomacBeads.eu. So the Carrelage bracelet is going to begin with 2 needles. Because we're beginning with those 2 needles, we have a size 10 needle on both the right and the left needle. And I have my clasp here first. I'm going to feature a cup button. If you want to, again, you can do no clasp and make this a bangle really simply to add together. I like clasps because the bangles tend to fit a little funky on my wrist. So the first thing I'm going to do is basically put a little bit of color in the center of the cup button. So I have 115, 111, 115 that I'm going to put on my needle. The 15 O's that I'll be working with are Miyuki Montana Blue Luster, and the 11 O's that I have are the Miyuki Matte Opaque Light Denim Luster. And I'm going to put those on in that series of 3, and then take my needle through the right and the left-hand side of the cup button. Once you have the cup button on, go ahead and put 3 of your 15s on both the right and the left needle that are going to hang out right after the cup button. From there, I want you to take 1 of your 8 O's, and my 8O is a Toho gold-lined rainbow black. And I'm going to go through and crisscross through, going 1 needle right to left, the other left to right, and pull that down, making sure, because you have about 5 feet of thread, that you have equal amounts of thread on either side of the needle. That's going to give a nice base for the button clasp or the loop to go around. If you are using a regular clasp, make sure to use a wire guard as well. It helps to fit it nicely. From here, I want you to add again 3 seed beads on both your right and your left needle. With a long thread, sometimes it gets a little tangled, but you can totally do it. Now we're going to go into our base pattern. So I have out here the Miyuki cubes, the 3.4 millimeter, drops, the Miyuki 3.4 millimeter drops in the Crystal Lab full color. I have my tiles in the Crystal Graphite, the 15s, the 11s, and the 8s. We're going to begin by adding our first tile bead. And the tiles with the Crystal Graphite, I'm going to put kind of the shinier side facing up. 1 needle is going to go through the left to the right, the other right to left. Pull that down next to the button, and again, still make sure at this point that you have equal amounts of thread on both sides. When you're coming out of the tile, you're going to grab a 15, 11, 15. Go through the second hole of the tile on both that right side and on the left side. This is going to repeat the entire length of the project. After you get this on both the right and the left side, we're going to do what's basically a connector connecting the 2 tiles together. Now, since we do everything the same on the right and the left, I went ahead and did the right side here, adding on to my needle after coming out of that tile, an 11, an 8, 1 11, 1 teardrop, and another 11. Take your thread and needle back through the 8 from the starting area, or where the thread first went through, up through towards the top. What this is going to do is that's going to spin that drop kind of off into a little bit of a trim. After you have that little trim there, go ahead and add 1 more 11, and then you're going to go into your next tile bead. You can see my needle that was on the right went over to the left, needle that is on the left goes towards the right, and that's going to connect these 2 pieces with just that exterior drop. We repeat the same thing now over and over, adding in on the sides of our tile our 15, 11, 15 on the right hand side as well as on the left hand side. And once you have those, then we do that connector again. And I'll show that connector one more time, just to make sure that you have it. Remember, with the connectors and with all of these YouTube videos, you have the option to slow them down. I know I speak quickly. You can also pause and repeat and kind of continue on whenever you want, as well as, again, always subscribe, and then you'll be able to kind of access whenever you have it saved as your favorites. From here, coming out of the tile, make sure you are not going through any of the 15 O seed beads, and your needles are coming just right out of the tile. Again, you're adding an 11, an 8, 11, drop, 11. Let that all fall down next to your next tile, or last tile. Go back through the 8 from the start of where the thread went through and up through. Once you do this, again, push down on that thread towards the tile to make sure you don't have a lot of extra thread showing. Add one more 11, pick up your next tile and face it so that kind of shiny side is up, and sew through. Once you have it on the right, do it on the left and keep going. When you get to and figure out how long you want this bracelet to be, keep in mind it'll shrink a tiny bit as we add the tubelets. So you'll probably want one more of the tile than you think will fit to the bracelet. So once you have the correct number of tiles, and I have 16 and I have kind of a small wrist, so maybe 17 or 18. And remember again, when you're looking at the bracelet here, you want it to actually touch the end because you want it to overlap just a tiny little bit, because it's going to get scrunched up just a tiny bit when we go in and we add the tubelets on the top between the tiles. From here, we're going to basically repeat the end. If you have a clasp, you are going to put the clasp on now. If you are doing a bangle, you are going to seam the two ends together. If you're doing a bangle, more like 22 or so of your beads is my estimate. I'm going to do 3 of my 15s, then my 1/8, and let that drop down next to the tile on the right needle. On the left needle, again, 3 15s, and then cross through the 8 in the opposite direction. What that's going to do then is bring that to my point, just like on the other end. And now I'm going to use a collection of my 11 O's to make my loop. So I'm going to do every other 11 and 15. You could do this peyote stitch, but I'm going to actually start with 2 15s just to get that nice kind of start to it, and then a series of 11s. You want your loop to be big enough to put your loop or your button through, but you don't want it, oops, I was going to do every other. You don't want it too big that it is going to open up. So keep that in mind as you're adding your beads onto your clasp. Again, if you are using a regular clasp, use a wire guard and you would put that on here. We have the opportunity now here to reinforce the clasp with the second thread that's hanging out on the left-hand side. So again, I'm just picking up every other 15 and an 11 and kind of using this to clean up my bead mat. As your beads, as you work with them, you can kind of see my needle going every which way. As you work with your beads, they'll jump around your mat. And you're going to kind of push them down. So I'm going to continue to grab beads to go through and make my loop for my cup button. After you're done reinforcing your clasp, taking both threads through, you're going to take the needle on the right hand side, come down through those 3 beads there along the outer edge, go through the tile here, and you're going to do the same thing on the other side. Once you're out the side of the tile, and one needle is going to be to the right, one needle is going to be to the left, you're going to add a couple drops. You're going to add drops on the sides of your tiles. The reason we have the seed beads below and we just didn't kind of go right through is because these are going to help keep that drop to the top. You're going to add a 15, then a drop, then a 15. Go through the tile, going from that first hole to the second hole, coming out, making sure you're not going through any of the seed beads. You do that on the right hand side to add another little drop on, and then you're going to do it also with the left hand side, coming down along the side, going through those 3 seed beads, and then every time you're coming out of the tile bead, you are going to be adding that 15 drop 15. The most important thing when you're adding these is to make sure that it's going to sit on top of the seed beads that are already there. Now when you have those 2 drops, again sitting on top of the seed beads on the sides of the actual tile, it's time to add in our tubelet. So you're going to add in 2 15s, then your tubelet, and then 2 15s. I'm holding the right needle right now, so I'm going to take that opposite into the left hand corner of the next tile's first hole. That's going to put it kind of on an angle. If you want to, you can actually keep it on an angle and make that part of the design. What I'm going to be doing is adding 2 more 15s with the left needle, go through the same tubelet bead, add 2 more 15s, and go through that same tile with your thread coming out the opposite side. Again, keep in mind that you want everything that you're adding to be a second layer on top of the first layer that you just did. Give a tight little pull. That'll pull the 2 tiles a little bit closer together and pop that tubelet right in the middle. Again, I'm on the sides of the tile, so I add a 15, drop 15 with my needle, go through the second hole of the tile from the right hand side going into the right towards the left with the right needle. Make sure that that drop will pop to the top. Add a 15, a drop of 15 on the left hand side, and do that mirror image. Again, making sure that the beads go to the top. Because we have that seed bead as a little base there along the end line, that's what's going to keep our drop from falling and keep it towards the top. Add 15 and a tube and 2 15s. Go to the opposite corner and sew in. So this continues, again, going to the top layer, the whole length remaining of the bracelet. Once we get down to the end, then we'll have the opportunity to reinforce the clasp, that button, and take 2 threads through it. And then because we have the 2 threads, it's really quick to end and give us that option to just tie the 2 threads into a knot to secure the end. Again, after each little tubelet, go ahead and give a nice tight pull. That'll pull the drops up, the tubelets in, as well as the tiles towards one another. So once you add your last drops, you are coming out of the last tile beads, just like we did at the start. And the start and the finish, because they're identical with those 3 seed beads and then going through, crisscrossing through the 8, we're just gonna let one of the needles hang out to the left. Whichever thread happens to be just a tiny bit longer, you can use, it's usually easier. You're gonna take your thread and needle up through those 3 15s, through the 8, and we're reinforcing the clasp by going through the 3 seed beads that sit before the button, going through the button, and at the same time, try to go through that first 15-0. Go through the 11 and the 15, and then back down the other side of the cup button. We have the opportunity here to tie the 2 thread ends together and finish the piece off. What I'm gonna do is tie the 2 ends together now that I have them right next to one another, keeping the needle on the project, or at least whichever thread is longer, which for now is gonna be the left-hand side. I'm gonna keep that needle on the left. Go ahead and tie your thread ends, again, trying to take it more to the back. And then with the left-hand needle, after doing 2 square knots, I'm gonna take the left needle and basically take the thread to burn off on a different side. That way I only have 1 thread end burned on that side. So I'm going back through the tile, give it a nice tight pull, which is gonna pull the knot back, separate out those 2 threads, and then take your thread burner and burn the 2 thread edges down. That's gonna finish up the end of this carrelage bracelet, which, as you can see when you wear it, those drops sit perfectly. It also is semi-reversible if you want the tiles to be more of the focus. Again, if you wanted to do it as a bangle, it would be 1 complete unit that would slide on and off, having sewn together those 2 last tile beads. Thanks so much for joining me in making this fun carrelage bracelet. Remember, if you need any of the materials, there are links below me in the description that you can shop online with us at PotomacBeads.com as well as PotomacBeads.eu. Remember, you can switch this up, try a couple different beads as the base instead of the tile, and kind of make it your own. Also, remember, you can always give a thumbs up to this video if you like it. Suggestions and comments are helpful that you can list below the video. And then also subscribe to this YouTube channel. When you subscribe, you get regular updates from us at Potomac Beads when we do new tutorials, new spotlights, new videos, and go live. As always, thanks so much for watching, and enjoy your own carrelage bracelet.